Operation Prosperity Guardian has been a complete and total failure. What the United States touted as a highway patrol for the Red Sea in response to the Houthis, to Ansar Allah's defense of Gaza via a blockade of this key trading route, has already come apart. It was supposed to be 20 plus countries strong, with Seychelles and the UK and Spain and Italy, etc., all part of what was supposed to be this powerful force of arms meant to respond to the freedom of navigation that was being suppressed by the Houthis' missiles and their broad range of attacks on the Red Sea. Now we are seeing the real results of this, and the real results are quite humbling, to say the least. I mean, this is what it looks like for the empire to be dealt a critical blow. So the Cradle reports that cracks are forming in NATO as U.S. claims over 20 nations on board for anti-Yemen coalition, but doubts remain about NATO member Spain's involvement in the Red Sea coalition, as the new leftist government did not take kindly to the launch of Operation Prosperity Guardian. So the Pentagon was saying that we've had 20 nations sign up to participate. We'll allow other countries defer to them to talk about their participation. So this was from the Pentagon Press Secretary Major General Pat Ryder. He said that it's a coalition of the willing, that each country can contribute what they can. In some cases, that will include vessels. In other cases, just staff like Canada sent and other types of support. Greece and Australia, the latest additions to the task force, which was launched officially as Operation Prosperity Guardian. Upon launching, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that it would have military support from Britain, Bahrain, Canada, France, Italy, Netherlands, Seychelles, and Spain. However, full involvement of some of Washington's NATO partners remains in doubt, particularly in Spain, as official announcements about Madrid's involvement have seesawed over the past week. Spanish officials confirmed support of protecting Israeli-linked vessels on December 19th as part of the EU Naval Force Operation Atalanta, a counter-piracy military operation off the Horn of Africa. This was also confirmed by commander of Operation Atalanta, Spanish Vice Admiral Ignacio Villanueva Serrano. Despite initial confirmation, local reports on December 20th cited military sources saying Madrid has made no decision about mobilizing any more ships near the Bab el-Mandab Strait. The only ship committed to the new U.S.-led alliance was described as the frigate Victoria, which had been providing support for Bulgarian cargo vessels taken by pirates weeks ago. A top branch of the Spanish Armed Forces backed these reports, saying that their decision for their possible participation in Prosperity Guardian would be made clear after taking into account all circumstances within the EU framework. So there's Spain. Okay. Other EU nations have also shown different levels of wariness about backing the U.S.'s military actions against Yemen, as many recognize the threat of escalating tensions with groups acting in support of Palestinians in Gaza. The UK offered to deploy its HMS Diamond destroyer, while nations like the Netherlands and Norway confirmed that only naval officers will participate. Italy's defense ministry said on Tuesday that one of its frigates would join the Western Alliance. However, Rome confirmed this would be considered part of an existing EU naval operation, not Prosperity Guardian. And the same thing with France. French defense ministry also announced its support for U.S.-led efforts, but clarified that its ships would remain under French command. Paris would not confirm whether or not it would deploy more vessels to the region. So this this is coming. So this is coming as Ansar Allah has in Sana'a in Yemen has recently threatened to strike all Saudi and Emirati oil fields in Riyadh if Saudi Arabia and UAE decide to take part in a pro-Israel alliance. Nevertheless, we have the U.S. still trying to push Saudi Arabia, but there have been no budging. So essentially, there's huge cracks in this alliance. It is not as strong as it was made out to be. We also have reports in the Times of India telling us similarly that they are getting limited backing from some allies. Okay. So the United States is assembling, this is the Times of India, a naval coalition called Operation Prosperity Guardians. But some countries have now confirmed their participation, while others said their efforts to help protect the Red Sea commercial traffic will be as part of an existing naval agreement rather than U.S.-led operation. So, lack of details and clarity over what countries are doing has added to confusion for shipping companies, some of which have been rerouting vessels away from the area after the attacks, which the Houthis are saying is a response to the Israeli assault on Gaza. So, as I said, they're talking, Spain, Italy, France, Britain, Greece, other countries. They are not necessarily participating in this full throttle. Spain, we will not participate unilaterally in a Red Sea operation. Britain said that the coalition will operate as part of the US-led CMF, but only sending one destroyer. Greece said Thursday it would send a naval frigate to the Red Sea that would participate in Operation Prosperity Guardian. But other countries are basically saying they're only going to send officers or they're going to run things under their command, such as Italy. So limited backing. This is essentially a victory for the Houthis. This has already fallen apart. This Operation Prosperity Guardian was supposed to be the United States basically pounding its chest and saying we still have the ability to organize a large majority of so-called allied countries into another coalition of the willing, which existed in wars like Afghanistan, like what transpired in Yemen for nearly 10 years during a Saudi-led assault. This was supposed to be another example of how the U.S. could use its influence to stop a threat. And the Houthis are indeed a threat because what they have done is changed everything. Essentially, they have changed the terms of what's going on in Gaza. They are still, this is Jerusalem Post reporting that the Houthis are still targeting naval vessels from the United States and commercial ships off the coast of Yemen. So Operation Prosperity Guardian has done absolutely nothing to stop the Houthis. They are not afraid. They have announced that they will take out all of the oil tankers, all of the oil installations in Saudi Arabia and the UAE. If they participate in this conflict, they will continue to reroute, to capture, to strike at any vessels attempting to aid Israel. So here we have the Houthi militia, which they always say is Iran-backed, but Iran, there's been no evidence that Iran directly supports Ansar Allah beyond supporting their overall objective for a sovereign Yemen. That is what they support. Hours after an Iranian drone attack targeting an Israeli-linked chemical tanker in the Indian Ocean, U.S. Central Command CENTCOM announced early Sunday morning that the Houthi militia launched missiles and drones toward a U.S. naval vessel and two commercial vessels. Throughout the day, the Houthis launched two anti-ship ballistic missiles from Yemen into international shipping lanes in the Red Sea, according to CENTCOM on December 23rd. Additionally, the USS Laboon shot down 4 drones the Houthis launched towards it as it was patrolling the Red Sea in the south as part of Operation Prosperity Guardian. A Norwegian-flagged, owned, and operated chemical oil tanker, the M/V Blaminen, reported that a Houthi drone detonated near it, and the MV Salaba, a Gabon-owned Indian-flagged crude oil tanker, reported it was hit by a one-way drone attack. No injuries were reported in either incident. The USS Laboon responded to 2 distress calls from the vessels. These attacks represent the 14th and 15th attacks on commercial shipping by Houthi militants since October 17th. The attacks are the latest affecting maritime traffic in the region as threats by the Houthis and Iranian officials escalate. So they're hitting Israeli vessels and tankers. They're hitting everyone who is associated with doing trade with Israel as it conducts its massacre in Gaza. And it's having a real effect. It's having a real effect both on the conflict and this is why it's so heroic and so incredible what they've done. Not only is the coalition fraying, but we are seeing real results from this blockade. Here you have Time magazine how and why Yemen's Houthi rebels are poised to seriously disrupt the global economy. And I'm just going to read you a bit of this. It says that 5 of the largest shipping firms announced they would redirect their containers from the Bab el Mandab Strait, the strategic waterway through which ships must pass their way to the Suez Canal, and which handles 10% of all global commerce. Following the announcement, traffic through the Red Sea dropped 35%. This is after the Houthis started attacking on November 19th, and they escalated in December. Where their missiles are basically aiming at several passing ships and hitting one. And so the ships are saying, "Oh no, we can't handle this. We're not going to handle this. We're going to reroute." And they are literally, not only are the insurance companies raising their interest rates in order to make more money off of this because the risks have gone up, but also they are rerouting to go all the way around the Cape of Good Hope, the south of Africa, to go all the way around to ship their goods, which has, of course, raised the shipping time, which has thus led companies to raise their prices. So following all of this activity, traffic through the Red Sea has dropped 35%. Commerce hasn't blocked completely since most ships can offer the longer and safer route around Africa, but the Houthis have increased the cost of shipping globally, imposing additional costs to commerce at a time when trouble at the Panama Canal has already made shipping more complicated, and central banks worry about an inflationary spike. If the Houthi blockade continues, the cost to consumers and the impact on local states will be considerable. In the event that the Red Sea is closed long-term, Europe and states in the Mediterranean will bear the brunt of the damage. Some countries in North Africa, such as Tunisia and Algeria, are also particularly vulnerable as they do most of their Asian trade through the Suez Canal. Israel, the Houthis' intended target, has suffered already as it's seen traffic through its southern port of Eilat come to a halt more than 85%. Though the port's relatively small side has made the overall impact fairly manageable. So Egypt is the big loser, which depends on fees through the Suez Canal for much of its currency earnings. Under strain of the humanitarian situation in Gaza and moribund economy, Egypt's authoritarian president Sisi may face major financial pressure if traffic through the canal slows. So roughly 12% of seaborne trade of crude oil and refined products goes through the Red Sea as well. So as you can see, Time magazine, a heavily establishment Western mainstream media outlet, U.S. mainstream media outlet, is also sounding the alarm. So the economic situation with regard to the blockade has been hugely effective. The economic impact. This is what the Houthis wanted. They wanted the basically the aggressor countries, Europe, the United States, Israel, to feel the impact of this blockade so that the conflict on Gaza, the war on Gaza Israel is waging, would be impacted as well. And it has been. It definitely has been. And let me show you how. So Europe has finally, right? So Europe, the United States, we're going to get into the limitations of this because it is not all ideal. But Europe's ministers call for a sustainable ceasefire in Gaza. Here's what that means. This comes during the Red Sea debacle. So you have UK Foreign Minister David Cameron and German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock expressing an editorial for the Sunday Times their backing of a sustainable ceasefire, quote unquote, in its war against Gaza. Cameron and Baerbock highlighted the difference between a sustainable ceasefire and immediate ceasefire, which has been widely called elsewhere. Let us be clear, we do not think that calling right now for a general and immediate ceasefire, hoping it somehow becomes permanent, is the way forward. Instead, they envision reaching a peace that lasts for days, years, and generations. So this is in response to what's going on in the Red Sea. But of course, what they're trying to do, which is similar to what the United States has done at the UN, which I'm about to show you, is to say we're not for an immediate ceasefire right now, but down the line, we definitely want a ceasefire that is long lasting. It's their way of saying Israel can have their cake and we can have ours too, but we need to get the situation under control. Really, it isn't getting anything under control because there is no ceasefire on the way, but there are huge changes to the war on Gaza, which I'm going to show you very soon. But essentially, okay, Um, there has been movement, though, in this regard. Okay, there has been movement. UN approves watered down resolution on aid to Gaza without call for suspension to hostilities. So this is a real sticking point. Okay, the United States is feeling massive pressure because of what the Houthis are doing. It's not just the Houthis. I mean, it's the overall situation that what the Houthis have done have added on another layer of pressure that was already there based on international public opinion, based on the UN General Assembly, the UN Security Council, all pushing in the vast majority for a humanitarian ceasefire that's immediate in Gaza. And the United States has felt massive pressure to not be the only one, which it has been, opposing it. So UN Security Council adopted a watered down resolution Friday calling for immediate, speedy deliveries of aid to hungry and desperate civilians in Gaza without an original plea for an urgent suspension of hostilities between Israel and Hamas. The long delayed vote in the 15-member council was 13-0, with the United States and Russia abstaining. The U.S. abstention avoided a third American veto of a Gaza resolution following the surprise October 7th attacks inside Israel. Russia wanted stronger language restored. The U.S. did not. So essentially, it was a resolution that does not allow for the conflict, the hostilities to stop right away, but it says that aid should be gone in a much speedier manner. But Russia abstained because it's essentially toothless, which it is. This is not going to stop the Houthis. The Houthis want an immediate end to Israel's onslaught. So this isn't it. But it does show that what the Houthis are doing, the economic pressure they're bringing to bear, is causing some movement, and it's going in that direction. And it's completely in line with international public opinion, which means Yemen is with the people. The Houthis, Ansar Allah, are with the people. The United States, not so much. And Russia, good on Russia, of course, to be one of the two major multipolar countries in the UN Security Council to veto it. So, um, this is big, but it gets bigger. So this conflict is about to change dramatically. All right. Israel is already talking about a new phase of the war on Gaza. And this doesn't necessarily have much to do with what Ansar Allah is doing. But I think it has a lot to do with the fact that Israel is recognizing its own capabilities. And I think it has something to do with the fact that it does not have the ability to achieve any of its objectives in this conflict, in lieu of the fact that there is both a regional and global movement against what Israel is doing. And Ansar Allah has put on, I think, the most significant pressure in that regard. So the Cradle reports that Israel is withdrawing ground troops from Gaza in a new phase of the war. So according to a report, this new phase will reportedly focus on continued air raids across the besieged enclave, where the proportional death toll has surpassed modern conflicts in less than 3 months. So yes, this is not peace. But essentially, what this means is troops are leaving Gaza with their tails between their legs because they cannot fight the guerrilla war, and they cannot escalate through manpower, through combat on the ground regionally in the way that their leaders, the Israeli leaders, have been intimating and indicating, have been trying to sow in the minds of Americans, Israelis, and the collective West by saying that they can stand up to Hezbollah, they can stand up to any force, right, that supports Palestine. Actually, that's not true. This is not true because they are leaving and switching to. This is reminiscent of Vietnam, when the United States, during the Paris Accords, basically went for Vietnamization, and all that meant was that the U.S. was going to fight rather than sending hundreds of thousands of troops into Vietnam. It's going to start to slowly withdraw them and move entirely and primarily into the air to try to essentially smoke out the Vietnamese. That's what they're going to try to do now in Gaza. So civilian casualties are going to remain high. But this is a big shift. All right. This is a big shift because I think what it shows is that they are running out of time, And this is another step toward the eventual defeat of Israel in this conflict. And Ansar Allah, again, has played a role in this because that economic pressure, both on Israel and in the wider world situation, is playing a huge role in the international pressure that Israel must feel right now. The Israeli army says a report um, from the Israel's Broadcasting Authority is preparing to move to a third phase of the fighting on Gaza in the coming weeks. It added that this phase will include ending the ground operation in the Strip, reducing forces, and demobilizing reserve forces. The new phase will focus on heavy bombardment and the establishment of a buffer zone near the Strip's border, in line with a long-standing Israeli goal. It claimed that the Israeli army took control of most of the northern Gaza Strip. Battles with Palestinian resistance continue to rage both north and south of Gaza. Israeli report comes days after the Golani Brigade, the elite one, withdrew from Gaza to reorganize its ranks. The Golani Brigade faced huge losses while fighting Qassam brigades, the Quds brigades, and other groups entrenched across the Strip. According to a retired Israeli general, the elite force lost a quarter of its troops. So they're getting their butts kicked. Yemen is kicking the butts of basically the entire U.S. Fleet of vassal states that have attempted to support Israel's onslaught of Gaza. Yemen and the Houthis have essentially made quick work of them, and now the resistance inside of Gaza are making quick work of the IDF. But the conflict is not over. There is no ceasefire. There is no ending to the bombardment of Gaza. So what that means is that Ansar Allah is going to continue to do what they're doing right now, which is continuing this blockade and putting economic hurt on the US, the Israeli, European, Western backers, and any state that decides to come to the aid of Israel. And this is a huge development. We are seeing the tides change. We're talking about the Houthis leading Yemen, one of the poorest, most impoverished, most war-torn and beleaguered countries in the world, making huge progress, right? And the blows keep coming. The blows keep coming. According to DD Geopolitics, friend of the show, after 9 years, all factions in the Yemeni civil war have reached an agreement to work towards a permanent settle to end the conflict. This is according to the United Nations. A special rapporteur of the UN to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, said the warring factions, including the Houthis and internationally recognized Yemeni government, have agreed on 3 basic steps toward peace: a permanent ceasefire, the improvement of basic living conditions throughout the country, and an inclusive political process under UN supervision. So this has occurred during this blockade. So it's obvious that this blockade has not had negative effects on Yemen. It's having positive. This is a report from December 23rd. So the blockade has been massively effective. The Houthis are scoring huge victories, both for themselves and for the Palestinian people, by standing up to the entire fleet of Israel's backers and really putting a dent on them economically and militarily. There's a reason why the collective West refuses to strike. They refuse to strike. Um, they refuse to strike uh, Ansar Allah. They refuse to open this up into a wider war because they know what will happen if that were to occur. They would lose. The United States has acknowledged it cannot defeat Iran. It cannot even defeat the Houthis. How can they defeat the Houthis now when they couldn't do it in Yemen during the Saudi invasion? They couldn't do it. And Saudi Arabia won't even pick up their calls about, hey, would you restart that conflict? Can you help us weaken them a bit? They won't even answer them. This is the United States showing itself as worse than a paper tiger. It is worse than a paper tiger. Much worse. It is much weaker than that. It is nothing but a feather in the wind that is being blown away by the forces of history. This is the gift that Ansar Allah gave us on this holiday season. They gave us the gift of exposing the United States as a paper tiger. We've seen this in Ukraine against Russia. We've seen the United States empire meeting its match in Ukraine as they try to use Ukraine as a proxy to defeat Russia. It backfired mightily. What they're doing now in Operation Prosperity Guardian is backfiring mightily. They're not going to be able to push back Ansar Allah. They're not going to be able to back Israel as it threatens a regional conflict over its genocidal rampage in Gaza. They're not going to be able to do it. All of this is pointing to an eventual massive strategic defeat for Israel, the IDF, for the United States and the NATO axis. That's what it's all pointing to. It's only a matter, just like Ukraine, it's only a matter of when. And then how are they going to tie up the knot and give us a different gift, to give us basically like in the movies where you get a gift and there's a ticking bomb in it. That's what they're going to try to present to us. They're going to say, we didn't actually lose. It's okay. This is actually how you should look at it. The United States protected freedom of navigation. We did what we could. And now you need to digest a bigger military budget, which Joe Biden just signed off on. And you're going to need to digest the next maneuver to try and weasel their way out of a defeat, essentially, meaning more war. So while the defeat is coming and the setbacks are very real, the United States, of course, and its NATO allies and its consortium of warmongering states making up a tiny, tiny fraction of the world population are going to be searching for the next opportunity. This is just a setback in that agenda, and it's why we need to reject those gifts, that propaganda, that gift-wrapped propaganda that's a ticking time bomb exploding in our faces when the next war happens and we all suffer the consequences of it economically, politically, militarily. We all suffer from it in some way. So that's what we need to watch out for as Yemen, impoverished but yet prideful, heroic Yemen, strikes an utter blow to the American empire and its aims to back the Israeli Zionist entity by any means necessary. Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.